Okay, so I think that means we're moving on to the schools, and I didn't do introductions for the school side at the beginning, so perhaps you would just want to incorporate that into your presentation. Brendan, do you have anything to tee this up, or are we handing it right over?
Nothing to tee it up on my end. I think this went to the council on Monday evening, and I don't have anything new to add from that.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just hand it over to School Board Chair Lentz.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Sarah Lentz, chair of the school board. Pronouns are she, hers, and I will just quickly introduce the folks that are on the call. We have Finance Committee Chair Bryden, who is here. Thank you. Board Member Opperman, Board Member Figdor, and then we also have our Superintendent Ryan Scallon, who will be walking through kind of an overview of where the budget is right now. Just a reminder of kind of the process that we've been through to get where we are, and then we'll be here for any questions or discussion that folks would like to have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Scallon. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. What I was hoping to do is we did a pretty detailed presentation a couple of weeks ago with the joint committee. And so what I thought it'd be helpful is recognizing that probably the bulk of the time would be best spent on questions and conversation, is that I would do sort of a catch up on where have we been since those conversations and what has changed in the budget, and do that and then open it up to questions if that works for the city. And so we're here today proud to present to you an updated budget that continues to focus on student outcomes, is grounded in equity, and is really influenced and based on community input, that we've gotten throughout this process. The overall budget is at $161.4 million. It centers students, invests in schools, and is aligned to the emerging strategic plan. As you see in the budget book, this is the first time that the district has presented a budget that includes all revenues and expenses, and so not just the local budget, which you can see as a standalone, but also all of our titles and other grants as well. The budget includes strategic funding for increased mental health, reading support, special education, and school culture at the school level, supports increased rigor in the classroom, and maintains funding for athletics, extracurriculars, and class sizes. This is an update. The proposed budget would raise the school portion of property taxes by 6.6%, or 49 cents. For a median homeowner, which we have still continued to use the 375 rate, that would be $183.75 per year. And the budget proposes to use $3.58 million in fund balance reserves in FY24. That's an area where we continue to monitor as we want to decrease our fund balance use, and we're using our pension obligation that is going to decrease over the next 2 years and eventually get to zero over the next 2 years to offset that use. Here are some of the updates that have happened that have caused our initial proposed property tax increase of 6.85 to go down to 6.6. So on the left, you can see some of the revenue adjustments that we've had. So the first is that we are now budgeting for $300,000 in Maine care revenue. This is a revenue stream that the district has received in the past. And the state is in the process of changing the reimbursement process for school districts to make it easier. We don't have exactly what those rules or that process will be. And so $300,000 is what we think of as a pretty conservative estimate that we are budgeting for here. We also got an update on the property valuation that we should use as we calculate the percent of the mill rate. And so when we presented to you originally, the valuation we were using was $15 billion. The updated number that we received from Brendan and the city was to use $15.029 billion. And so that allowed us to lower the overall property tax increase from 6.85% to 6.6%. On the right side, you can see updates that we had around expenses since we started this budget process. So PFML is the new state program for family medical leave. As we got additional guidance about the new law and the new program, there are some employees that we have that, because they are currently under a union contract that will still be in effect next year, we do not yet need to budget for PFML costs next year. And so we were able to reduce our budgeted expenses there by $322,000. We originally budgeted for benefits to increase by 10%. We've since got our budget, our actual benefits increase for next year, and it'll only be 5.56% increase. And so that resulted in a lower budgeted expense of $885,000. So those are two areas of great news. And as we shared with you, and as we've wrestled with as a group, this budget has had a lot of hard trade-offs and a lot of reductions that we've had to make, primarily at the central office, but there's also been challenges where we've had to reduce staff at the school level. And so when we did receive the good news around some of the lower budgeted expenses, we did increase the number of budgeted school-based staff in our budget. And so we have, in the budget that you have in front of you now, 10 additional school-based staff positions. These positions are primarily targeted to support our schools that serve the majority of our low-income students. We have 5 central office positions that we're returning to the budget. These are not new positions, but these are the return. Actually, that's not true. There are a couple of new, but they are returning capacity to the central office. And then there are 2 positions which I'm calling strategic investment capacity. One of them is to help us realize that Maine Care revenue. So one is an individual to help us develop and manage Maine Care reimbursement. And the other is, when we started this budget process, one of our goals, one of our principles of our budget process was to make sure we got to a sustainable budget and a sustainable district structure. And so one of the positions that we are budgeting for, or the process that we're budgeting for, is to look at redistricting and the overall structure of the schools. And so that is a position that was added in here, with the idea being that there may be a 1-year position that would allow us to achieve some long-term programmatic benefits. And so that was added in there. So that's what you see here, is you see the revenue adjustments and the expense adjustments. At a headline level, though, with all of these changes over this time, the actual property tax increase from what was proposed originally in our initial conversations went down from 6.85 to 6.6%. And the fund balance use, if I can go back here, went up just slightly. The original proposal was $3.5 million, and it went up $80,000 to $3.58 million. So that's what you see here. This is just a reminder that overall, we still continue to see a decrease in our proposed budget from what we have this year to what we have next year. This is largely driven, all driven by a loss in non-local revenue. That is driven by the fact that we are losing $9.4 million in COVID funds from this year to next year. And so you see our local funds needing to increase from 144 to 154 to help make up for that loss of funding. And then just to reorient for folks who missed that early meeting but are now looking at the budget book, just a couple of pieces around how we're presenting the information in the budget book, just to make it helpful to understand. The first is that we're presenting all revenues and expenses, not just those in the local budget. So as a council, your work is to approve the local budget, not the grants, but we want to present the whole picture so that the community, our school board, and you know what we're spending all of our money on. So you see the full picture. We've included in the budget book both a 5-year budget for the district as well as 1-year budgets for the district, departments, and schools. The 5-year budget we felt was important as we wrestle with this idea of how do we get to a sustainable structure. We also have that same piece for the fund balance. One of the things I'll just say here, because it came up in a council discussion around fund balance, fund balance is different for the district than it is for the city. The district is not, the district is only allowed to maintain a certain percent as a fund balance based on state regulations. And so with the influx of COVID funds, it went up to 9% of our operating that we could maintain as a fund balance. That decreases over the next couple of years down to below 5%. And so we actually have to spend down a little bit of our fund balance over this time. And then you'll also see detailed non-personnel budgets, which I'll show you on the next slide. And so in our non-personnel, as we've talked about in the past, we went through a zero-based budgeting process. And so when you look in the budget book, you will see lines that say things like purchase professional and technical services. And then I think it's on the next page, if I remember the budget book picturing it, you'll be able to see exactly what was in that line. So what contributes to the $638,000, exactly how it breaks down there. Again, that's just to provide detail because $638,000 in purchase professional and technical services can seem like a little bit of a black box. So we wanted to provide the clarity of exactly what it is. Sorry, that should have been a skip slide. And with that, I will open it up to questions and discussion.
Questions on this at this point? I think we'll be moving into a public hearing at this point. So perhaps the discussion will be better left for our deliberation at the end of that. Brendan or City Manager West, did you have anything you wanted to say before we go right into a public hearing?
Nope, just I wanted to draw everyone's attention to the fact that we typically have a noon cutoff for addition of public comment. We only got one this afternoon. We added it to the backup. So there is one public comment on this item in the backup.
Okay, and I also meant to say at the beginning of the meeting that we had some additional items that were in the process of being uploaded in case you were trying to retrieve agenda items, but it sounds like that's all set now. So, okay, well then we can move into a public hearing. So this is the public opportunity to weigh in on the school board's budget, FY25 budget, which is before the City Finance Committee for a vote this evening. I will open up my attendees screen, look for hands. If you have public comment to offer, you'll be allowed 3 minutes. You don't have a whole lot of attendees. Okay, Stephen Sharp.
Stephen Sharp of Brackett Street in Portland. I don't have a whole lot to say regarding the school budget. I actually, unfortunately, was interrupted during superintendent's presentation and only heard part of it. I did note that he referenced the fact that you're only voting on the part of the budget that you are allowed to vote on, and I think it's very important that you very specifically, when voting, make note as to the exact dollar amount you are voting on, so that the public and then the record shows the specific amounts you're voting on, as opposed to the amounts presented as if it is the entire budget. And do want to make note of that. I quite frankly see no reason our budget, the city portion of the budget, should go up by essentially $9 million. And with the enrollment in the school system being virtually level, and has been level for several years, yet every year we seem to feel the need to significantly increase the school budget. There needs to be a time when leadership of the city deems it necessary to hold the line on our school budget and make adjustments in line with the actual enrollment of the schools. So that's all I have to say right now.
Chair Trevorrow, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying next is Maya Lena. You may go ahead.
My name is Maya Lena. I live on Essex Street, and I'm a parent and a substitute teacher at Rowe Elementary. I'm speaking in support of the proposed budget. The budget was created by listening to what people in the schools are asking for to make our schools as successful as possible. The superintendent has taken the time to listen to parents, teachers, and building administrators in order to create this budget. I really urge you to support it. I think it's great. I think it's going to set up our schools for success for many years to come. So please vote in support of this budget.
Thank you. Looking for any other hands. Lara Rosen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Lara Rosen. I live at 59 Edwards Street, and I similarly would like to encourage the Finance Committee to pass along the full budget to Council for review and approval. This budget represents a very thoughtful process by the school board and the superintendent and staff to in a very tough financial situation to really create a budget that centers students and really helps maintain the work that we've done so far on equity and academics and social emotional learning. And I just really want to encourage you to recommend that this full budget be passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to offer comment on the school board's FY25 budget? And I don't see any other hands going up. So at this point, I will conclude the public hearing. And we are ready for a vote. Brendan, is there motion language in here?
So I actually would ask Superintendent Scallon to, he has two numbers, the 161 million and the 154. I wonder if he has the exact $154 million amount. I think because that's the one that goes to the full council, I believe.
Yes. It's 154,045,767.
Okay. So should we put that on for a motion first before we deliberate? I see we have one hand up already. So okay. So I would entertain a motion that the committee recommend passage of the school board's FY25 fiscal year budget in the amount of $154,045,767.
And I would just add, as presented by the superintendent this evening.
Yep, perfect.
So moved.
Perfect. All right, moved by Counselor Fournier, and I will second that. And then we're on for a discussion. So, Counselor Sykes.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to jump the gun here if other committee members want to talk. I had a question as I was going through the budget, because I'm not very familiar with this program, but I'm a little confused about how we fund adult education. And when I look at that particular department, in particular, a bunch of grants that seem to not be budgeted for this year. I'm curious what's going on. It's just those levels are up and down, and I don't understand kind of how it works. So I'm just hoping to get some understanding of that.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. If Chair Lentz, you're comfortable with me answering that. Sorry, I don't know protocol on this. So that's actually exactly the piece here, right? So what we wanted to do was, where we knew that there was a likelihood that a grant was going to be received and that we felt comfortable budgeting it, that we budgeted it. Adult ed, there was similar to what we experience in the K-12 space. There's a number of grants that had COVID money behind it that also expired. And so they're actively pursuing right now a number of grants. We anticipate that they'll get some, but we don't have visibility into exactly which of those grants they will receive. Some of those grants are for new programming. Some of those are direct reimbursement, right? Where they will contract with an organization for work training, in which case they will get reimbursed for expenses. And so what you're seeing there is a loss of COVID funds at one level. And then what you're seeing is that they're just in a cycle where they're going after a number of new grants and they just don't have them yet. The other piece that, just so you know, is that they do receive a portion of the local property tax that is raised. And so that percent that they receive remains steady from year to year. So it's the same proportion of the overall.
Great. Thank you very much. That helps a lot.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Fournier.
Thank you so much. Not a lot of questions. We saw a lot of this, I think, when you had presented to the council. So a lot of this is pretty familiar. Sorry, my phone keeps going off. I'm going to put myself on do not disturb because that's getting annoying. Apologies. But I think I said this in the full council meeting, just really appreciative of this process, the transparency in which you have kind of brought all of us through your zero budgeting process, and really heard, I think, both from the community and from those working in the schools, the need to really be fiscally responsible, but also meet the needs of teachers and students and staff in schools. And so I do appreciate that. I think one of the things I'm reminded of, having, two kids in high school who were in middle school during the pandemic and one who graduated during the pandemic, is that learners are different. And, I know we hear public comment of enrollment is going down, and so why aren't the numbers going down? But I think we see new and different challenges, with emerging from the pandemic, with the needs for different skills, not only for our educators, but then for the students as they're going through schools. And that takes a lot, I think, of an investment to really shift how we teach students, how we evaluate students, how we do development for our educators, and how we support families. And so this really is a huge investment for our community, in the future of our community. So I'm really, really grateful for the thoughtful budget that you brought forward, and look forward to supporting that. So thank you for all the work that you have done on that.
Thank you, Counselor. And I will just say that I echo that sentiment. The budget process has been great this year, and I felt that I have gotten all the information I need. My questions have been fully answered. The presentation has been easy to digest and helpful in understanding your vision and your goals. And where your investments are being made. And I certainly believe that education is one of the greatest and most valuable investments we can make that pays off for our whole society. So thank you for your work this evening, and I will look forward to supporting this. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will call for a vote, and it's just the two of us tonight. So Councillor Fournier, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. And that concludes our FY school budget deliberations of the Finance Committee. Thank you guys. You're welcome to hang out with us, or you're welcome to go home and have dinner or whatever else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Lentz, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just two quick thoughts, just to make sure that on the record, our student enrollment has actually been going up for the last several years. So we haven't reached kind of pre-pandemic levels, but our enrollment along with the needs of our students is actually increasing. So I just want to make sure that that's on the record. And just I am incredibly thankful to everybody on the City Council so far who has reached out for more information, is being so curious about the budget and really trying to understand the challenges that we face and the opportunities and really great strengths in the district right now. So thank you all for your collaboration.
Thank you, Chair.